Take a moment. Look around. What do you see? What do you feel? Our surroundings are such a beautiful thing. But here's the twist. We see, but do we observe? Do we witness nature's diversity? Welcome inspiration which only comes from our dependence upon each other? Do we rest with friends, allowing the wonder of being in a moment to shape our future? I notice that creation sparks our curiosity to connect on another level, to build together, to emerge into an unknown adventure. Who could we meet? What might we experience? And isn't that what's exciting about life? The mights, the maybes.
My name is Dave Erasmus, and I lived in the woods for a year. Not every day, but enough to disrupt my world. I called my experience the Corcovado Project, named after my love of the biodiverse haven in Costa Rica's rainforest. During my 12 months, these woods taught me that I was connected to something deeper, a beauty and intelligence beyond articulation. I invited musicians, artists, makers, and seekers into this wonderland of nature. Together we learned to flow with the seasons and enjoy the Corcovado state of mind. And then the invites came, from old and new friends, landowners and creatives, people who shared the same values, asking if this state of mind could come into their worlds. I didn't know whether the spirit of Corcovado could be shared globally, but I wanted to try. We wanted to try.
Over 4 weeks in November 2018, we occupied natural spaces in Scotland, France, Spain and England. We cooked together, shared rooms and lifts, stories and tears. Needless to say, none of us knew what was about to happen next.
I don't know, I'm not sure.
I literally had no idea what to expect.
I didn't really know what the event was going to entail.
That's a tough one.
I had to force myself to stop myself from asking Dave, what's the plan, who's coming, what's the order? And I'm trying to kind of thrive in the uncertainty.
It's hard to answer that question because I was really unsure.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
And so the adventure begins with a question. What does community mean?
Yeah, good question. I was very much part of the community, I'd say, because I went to boarding school.
I never moved house, so I guess I had community in different ways in different communities where I live. So I always had a very stable base of home life.
I've never felt part of a community before. I've always had quite a big family, extended family, and lots of friends, but never part of a community.
I'm living now since 1 year in a community house in Brussels. It's amazing. And now it's 7 people, and I want to live with 30 people, 200 people.
From Syria, from the background I came from, the community was something very important. So in my neighborhood back in there, everybody knows the other, that's at least, but maybe because it was a closed community, not really cosmopolitan as it is.
Good luck, George. Thank you. That's a blooming tight gate to get through.
That's a classic mini greeting.
So casual. What an entrance.
Maybe community is more than just sharing a common space. But if so, what can community do for our lives?
I think it can really do everything for people. It can wipe away the apathy that we suffer from so much in late stage capitalism. That, let's be frank, that's the paradigm that we live in. We're coming to the end of the current political and economic paradigm that's existed. And we're all struggling to know how to make our way into the future beyond that.
Where did they come from, those beautiful marks of history? Guess from the heart that bleed in quiet tears. happiness, my pain, your art, to all the restful days we walk. Time to remember the life and the scars. Tie me tight and hold me close, then thou mend this broken soul. Shine your light over me, like a heart to a king. Let's ease our minds. Stories never spoken hang in our eyes, 'cause hopefully possibilities I realize through our smiles, the pain and the healing, the joy and the scars. Tie me tight and hold me close.
I feel like the main problem now in our world, we are a little bit disconnected. Not a little bit, sometimes too much. But on the other side, we don't think what's connecting us and what is the common between us as a human. So this is what I want to say is we are taught how to be disconnected and how to find the difference between, but always we forget this moment that, come on, we have many common things. So let's focus on this. And for me, it's like this is my hope, my wish, if we really focus on this, even the crisis in the world will be less than now.
We are all human, we're all equal on the same level, no one's better than anybody else. It just cuts it back down to what is our shared humanity, and it values real relationship, which means listening and not judging and being part of each other's stories and learning from each other.
It needs to be redesigned like all over in order to have it more efficient, as it was, let's say, in older times when people were more connected to each other. Now, like, we have the social media also, which some people say it like very useful for connecting, but the thing is, it's connecting you with other people on different continents, but not connecting you with the one next door.
I've done all I could, now I'm biding my time. I watch from a distance, you leave me behind. You're not making this easy, but I'll prove you wrong. I know you don't need to know, but I'm just moving on. But oh, please have mercy, it's hurting me now. And oh, please have mercy, and let me be found. 'Cause where are you? 'Cause I need you now. And oh, please have mercy, and oh, please have mercy, and oh, please have mercy, and oh, please have mercy. 'Cause where are you? 'Cause I need you now. And oh, please have mercy, and let me be found. 'Cause I may falter most of the time. You said this would happen, and I proved you right.
If you didn't know where in the world you were going to be born, what kind of world would you want there to be? And it's just a really simple thought experiment. But if you really get into that, it starts to sort of, I think, open up the kind of systems we want to have in the world to try to make sure that wherever on earth we were born, we had a reasonable chance at living a life where we get a chance to have relationships and love and the stuff that we need and the chance to flourish. And that really, for me, begins to crack open a topic of fairness. I don't know if I can put it into words very well, but all I can really say is that I know that pursuing beauty, which is kind of like the world I found in the woods of just having very little stress, just not a lot to do each day, and kind of a very supported life through friends and others, locals helping me. It's not enough, really. It's not what makes the fullest life, because if everybody all around the world was just frolicking around in the woods, like making songs, making a fire, and then, you know, sleeping peacefully, then maybe that would be okay. But that's not the reality of how everybody else is living.
Picture cast each other down the line. Just an image of a moment in time. Sign your life upon its dotted line. And it's cold, just like a hunter who is saddened by the snow. Just like a butterfly, she waits in her cocoon. So give her room and let her grow. And I draw a line for you, though I find it hard to let go. There's a fire that burns my heart and holds my hopes. And I draw a line for you, and I find it hard, but I know there's a light that burns to purify my heart. Oh.
My non-fiction stuff, I write about activism, and you try and pick up the hidden stories of activism away from the central heroic storylines, and try and find characters that have changed society in ways that we just don't talk about. I went up to the Isle of Lewis, I think just like in 1999. I left that island broken. And it's because I just hung around with a bunch of old, precious individuals whose stories hadn't been told, who didn't care that their stories hadn't been told. Some of their stories had been co-opted, other people had taken their stories and made it their own. And yet there was something about how they lived and how they saw the world around them that exposed the selfishness of my own life and just the egocentric nature of myself. And the best way to describe it was you look at them and they just look like you and me. But then if you go over to them, it's at that moment that you discover the most precious thing that every one of us carries. And yet the way we are encouraged to tell stories is that we lose the power of it. It's only when at this moment, when you feel their embrace on you, that you feel the splinters and the scars and the cuts of their life. The hidden stories of love, of compassion. Maybe it is that they reconfigured their monthly budget and so their kids could have more food than them. Or the teacher at school who stays really late because there's just some kids who just need something a bit more. It's those hidden scars that are just so beautiful, powerful, and we've all got them. And we all need to figure out how we tell those stories.
My mom's always been nomadic, and she moved around a lot. My sister and I went to about 28 different schools. So we've always felt like we didn't have a community. So I think for me, it kind of resonates to my personal need of wanting to be part of a bigger picture. And I think, we do live in quite an individualistic society where we go through a lot of things on our own and we experience things on a very individual level. And I think community is so important because actually a lot of people are having the same experiences but in isolation. So for me personally, it's having a place that people can come to and they feel safe in, and I feel safe in here. So I'm hoping that by opening the door to others, kind of like, hi guys, welcome, you're home, and that I can connect. At the end of the day, in a way, it's a little bit selfish. I'm searching for community, and I know that a lot of other people are.
In the spirit of kind of short fragments, this is something definitely sort of unfinished, but it's just a very short piece about finding the right language. And this came, again, from another conversation in LaSalle, and someone that joined Jess in the project out there. We were sort of chatting over breakfast, and he was talking about building a community. And I challenged him and said, I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but about growing a community. And it was a good conversation, because he kind of said, well, build, grow, whatever. And I thought, well, actually, it is important, how we think about that, because a community is not made of interchangeable pieces like bricks. If brick is missing, you just plug another one in. Something that's grown is much more complex and interconnected, and it starts from somewhere. There's something to germinate. So just like this. Mind and replace. Find and replace. Brain with mind. I need to remind you, you say it all the time. Brain's but an organ, but mind is my life. Life of the mind. Depth and height. Sound, smell, sight. Touch in the night. Undiscovered senses, they're all mind-centered. Find and replace. On within. We live in the planet. Place rubbish on bin. Find and replace. Build with grow. Do we build relations? Hammer blow by blow? Blunt force, dumb matter shatters from a battering. Feel of the soil. Sprout seed circles scattering. Growing relations. Fresh attention on their happening.
See you later, Team Scotland.
And so, after a precious time in Scotland, some friends go home, and others join up as we head off to a chateau in France. Community has a heartbeat, values, and that adventure has only just begun.
I think what I've seen people go through here is just getting to know themselves better and relaxing, and not in the finding a hammock somewhere and relaxing, but actually relaxing, taking all of the masks off, all of the the armor that you carry around in the city.
We set up our lives in such a way that they go like this, and one thing has to lead to another, but actually does it. Coming away from all that gives you perspective.
The one thing I'm going to start with, and the thing I want to finish with, and I don't want you to get confused with anything else that's said by me or shared by anybody else the whole day, is that this is ultimately about friendship. Even very successful people, very articulate or highly skilled in their creative expression, maybe even very wealthy, are crying out for community, are crying out for the kind of relationships that go beyond the doing of life, the meaty-greety networking, the kind of transactional kind of way of living that I think modern society offers us.
There's not many things I remember. I blame that I'm getting high, but the things I do remember don't tear me up inside, 'cause I know you were invited. There was no gun held at my head, but there was something so criminal about a Christmas day like that. Took a whole lot of healing, a lot of forgiveness. Took a whole lot of healing, a lot of forgiveness. It feels like only yesterday that I followed the wolf into the woods. But every time I drive on through, Byron becomes less about you.
There's a story of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and Holmes has just solved this awesome case, and Watson is trying to figure out a way of writing it to get it into the Times, and Holmes is not giving away any clues at all. And they're walking down the street, and Watson is pressing Holmes about it, and he's just not saying anything. They get to 221B Baker Street, get to the door, open it up, start climbing the steps, and Watson is still pressing for that elusive answer. And Holmes still doesn't give it away. They get inside, get into the lounge, the log fire's burning. Watson's about to give up, and Holmes suddenly turns around and asks, "How many steps did you climb?" And Watson is a bit confused. So what's that got to do with solving this case? And Holmes says, "That's exactly how I solved the case." He says, "How many years have you been living in this apartment and climbed those steps? And you still don't know how many steps? Thing is that you see, but you don't observe." And there's a subtle difference between seeing and observing. If I reflected back to myself, I see a lot. The way I digest news, the way I kind of scan around here, all the stereotypes that I've got in my head right now. But do I really observe? Do I really observe it's the best of times? It's the worst of times? And the impact it has upon myself, and my responsibility in that.
Just the idea of being out in nature, having that freedom, having the space to think, having the space to reflect, is really important. Like, there's been lots of research done on nature and mental health.
Nature will, have its own way, and you just need to be a part of it. Because, cities were built by humans for humans, and when you're here, you need to respect something different.
I think kind of dipping in and having regular reminders of, how beneficial it is, how the feeling that you get when you have good conversations with people, time for those conversations and way of being where there isn't a clear, strong agenda or anything that has to be done or must be done or has to go this way, is just so beneficial.
I cannot be like my whole time like this, but at least just give some time for yourself, for your heart. It's not only mind sometimes, it's not only brain, just like also this connection with like your heart and brain. And sometimes I forget my heart, and I feel really regret it.
Rolled out what was left and ran to the river that knows all my strides. I smoked away some memories and stared. The moment's come to say goodbye. My water's edge and church bell chimes, and the ripples whispered out to me and said, wherever you may go, whatever you may do, I'll always be. Whoever you may see, however you may fly, I'm Upon that bridge, that lookout post, with the water lights that breathe below, and a chapel that reminds me of things sometimes. Yet thankfully I wander more as a current takes my stock to shore. It seems I'm always taking the long way home, 'cause wherever you may go, whatever you may do, I'll always be. Whoever you may see, however you may fly, I'm always there. Wherever you may go, whatever you may do, I'll always be. Wherever you may see, however you may fly, I'm always there.
I think when you get into nature and build a love for it and then do it with other people, the ideas start flowing, the creativity starts coming, and we can each decide how small or how big a part we want this world to play in our lives, whether it's 1 hour a week going for a walk with no phone, whether you build some pallet furniture in your garden with your kid or with your best mate, or whether you end up living fully off-grid at somewhere like LaSalle or somewhere like this in the woods. I sure as hell know that you don't come up with good ideas about living differently when you're sat in a flat in London doing your normal 9 to 5.
Community is diverse, just like the nature around us. It yearns for us to observe how everything is connected and dependent on one another. And so, as we hit the road to Spain, we are beginning to value the importance of being in a moment.
I feel like we have forgotten how to listen to silence. There are some paradigms that are shifting around how people go to cities to connect and to the countryside to disconnect. I think the balance is turning around, and we're actually going to places like this to connect. I moved in here after about 2 years on the road working in conflict and post-conflict countries. The thing that I love the most about this place is that I get to choose my distractions. When we live in cities, just have information, and it's like you don't have control over your distractions and what takes you away from your intention for the day or the task at hand. And here, if I want to come to this mountain or this hill, I know it probably will take me like an hour and a half, but it's a choice that I make. If I choose to go to my terrace and listen to the birds, it's a choice that I make. So I get both ends of the spectrum in this tiny village of 80 people. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be able to share it with all of you.
We were talking before, we're both like, I'm a city boy and Nicole's a city girl, we love the city, thrive in that chaos and that craziness of cityness. So I don't spend much time in the countryside. And what I realized in France, I was kind of walking on my own through that like scary gate thing. And I was really overwhelmed and a little bit scared. And it made me feel tiny and irrelevant. And then that just put a lot in context for me. I was just like, I'm just like a piece of carbon that's somehow been lucky enough to like find my way on this planet in this particular century, in this particular part of the world. So I'm very, very grateful. But really, I'm really irrelevant. Yeah. And just being in nature, which is very rare for me, because I kind of stay away from nature because it's like, no, I've got to work and, build my career. It's actually improved my clarity of thought. So I've managed to think in ways about certain things from perspectives that I didn't before. I don't know if that's because of the people I'm around or it's the countryside. It's probably both. Maybe this is it and I can bring that in and every 6 months I do something similar, or maybe I integrate the countryside more into my flow of life and on the weekends I spend more time. But it's definitely triggered some more creative flow within me that I hadn't experienced in the city.
One thing that stands out for me was just in the middle of the day, Ollie took me aside and was like, do you want to learn the piano? Let's have a lesson. And having a lesson with him, and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to learn how to play the piano. So I'm like, okay. So that's like an example of where someone just brings their talent and then brings you into it. And then suddenly you're doing it together, whereas it was something very alien to me before.
It wasn't easy in my community to be an individual. So it's so important to know that your individual spot is existed. You are safe as an individual, and in the group, you are also existed.
Everyone's like actually really close. Like it's weird, it's strange, like how close everyone has got in 2 days. It's really strange. I've never actually experienced anything quite like that. And I think it's just because people have just got in a space where they're allowed to just be creative or just chat, talk about what they want to without any kind of boundaries to it. So there's no one being fake or trying to impress people, so you really feel like you have got to know someone when you're chatting to them. But yeah, everyone's just like mega close after 2 days, it's wicked.
Que no se quieren acabar, lo revivo una vez más, ese amor que no fue, el odio que tragué, amigo que fui, los que gané. Cuando perdí la fe y la recuperé, lo viví todo y lo olvidé. Mi recuerdo vive.
In this process of bringing people here, in the process of also thinking how could we grow this village, or where could I go and live with my people, I hope I can contribute to this way of living that takes us back to the collective. And now we're trying to figure out as a collective species, what do we sacrifice on the individual side in order to go back to the collective without it being too hard.
It will evolve. So what we'd say here now will be different in 2 years' time. The journey will be very different. I really liked when Virginia was talking about the space and her village and access to a building that people can then start to build up to keep her community thriving. Can you imagine if what was talked about today in 2 years' time it is an eventuality?
I echo those thoughts. For me, it's not, Corcovado is not like a way of life yet. It's more getting interesting, curious people together to forge the friendships, to create the connections and to plant the seeds for some cool shit that's going to be happening.
This is very needed in future communities and in our communities in big cities. Maybe we cannot change everything into this thing, but we can have some spaces like that and see what will happen.
We are a physical space, but what we really want is to create connections that actually work beyond this space. So people come here for an event, or they connect, they have a really great time, they go off, they meet up in London, or they meet up wherever in the world, and then they start something together, or they just have a drink together. We really want to plant those seeds so that it doesn't just become about this, it becomes about a wider network.
When people understand this project, they have to go into the city and start showing people, the friends network, how different life is.
There's some people that get it, and there's some people that don't. Don't worry about the ones that don't. It's just don't need to harp on that. Just find the ones that you have a connection with and make you feel good, and start to understand those feelings, because those are the people that you can do stuff with.
We're all going somewhere, and occasionally we'll join together and walk a little bit of a journey, and we'll tell tales to one another, and then we'll go and do other things, and then we may come back and stuff. And it's in that sharing our hearts and our tears and our joys and our success and failures that we feel like we're part of something bigger, and it inspires us to go forward. And I think that's the thing I've picked up a lot, particularly around trying to pick up on the hidden stories. So how many times we think that we're alone, we're doing this alone, and we're not. There's loads of people doing this, and to have that element of support is beautiful.
The community path is the love path, is the inclusion path. So when you start to open yourself and to exchange and to include, you feel well, you feel energized, and that's when you start to touch and to taste that. You don't want to nothing else.
I believe this blind dependence we have on the system, like in our lives, is preventing us or making us blind or not seeing the other people around us, or like trying to take care of them, or like let them take care of us, or in any way or another. And that's what making us so isolated. So I don't know like what we can do, but we should care more.
It's still kind of an open experiment, I think, and it's still about finding a way of connecting communities that cherish creativity and values before sort of material success. And I think I got that before, and that hasn't changed, but I've seen it in action now, and I'm really impressed and really excited.
Mainly just take away just how nice it was to connect with a group of people that I didn't know. It's nice to remind yourself that that's doable, because I think you do forget that. I think it might have been Jodie who said, like, what made her like remember this weekend was we're all really similar. And coming to something like this, that really kind of reinstates that, like, we're all really similar. Like, even though people seem miles apart, we're not.
People will necessarily get it until they've been in it, but it's definitely sort of the mind over matter scenario that they can definitely take away into the real world. It's been an unforgettable experience that has changed me completely.
I'm not alone, and many other people, when they feel, I just want to tell them, like, you are not alone. And I'm talking with myself again. Like, of course, when I come back, I would say, go back to, busy life. And like, just I wrote to myself that I'm not alone. And whenever I feel, or to every human, whenever you feel like you are alone, just look around you. You will find something. You will find somebody and something. Yeah, it's very nice moments, really. I'm so grateful.
I think we did it. I think we did. I'll have to look back at these clips and see what you've captured from people. But from me, walking around with my own eyes, it feels like that life grew, that things blossomed. I don't think much died. I don't think much withered away, let's say, because death, that happens. But withering away through lack of nutrients, that's what we don't want. For this to survive, for this thing to work and not flop, people need to get out of their consumer mindset of, I've come here, I've traveled this way, so therefore put it on for me, treat me like a king. And yesterday especially, we would have been out of here in a couple of hours if people had that mindset, but they didn't. And that's the culture I want to be in. That's what I need. I can't survive without help like that, without help of friends doing different jobs to support each other, and then we get cool culture. We get what we want in life. So I'll be keen to see the interviews you've picked up, but I think that's the thing I'm most proud of being a part of this community, is that people really have taken their personal responsibility to just do their job. And if you do that, then life's a lot better.
Oh, feel the remedy, the solace of the trees and the warmth of the fire, and the still of the night. And feel the remedy, the solace of the trees and the warmth of the fire, and the roar of the night.
Just like Corcovado, I guess, has been the song of one of the maybe the biggest soundtrack, I guess, to the tour, in a way, for obvious reasons. But this song called Wherever, has also been a strong theme. I actually wrote it one night in my hometown because I had been sat watching telly with my housemate and his to-be girlfriend. But all of a sudden, at about 11 p.m., my housemate and his to-be girlfriend just started kind of kissing heavily on the floor. And I thought I should probably leave. And I don't particularly smoke or advocate smoking, but my housemate's Rolling tobacco was on the side, and I thought that he maybe owed me one, so I I made myself a little cigarette, and I was feeling a bit reflective and like maybe that this, despite this beautiful town being such a big part of my life, maybe it's not where I wanted to be anymore. So I went and sat by the river and stared at the bridge and the chapel on the bridge that's there, and wrote a poem essentially. And it kind of became this song, and it's called Wherever. Yeah, so there you go. I rolled up what was left and ran to the river that knows all my strides. I smoked away some memories and stared. The moments come to say goodbye. My water's edge and church bell chimes, and the ripples whispered out to me and said, wherever you may go, whatever you may do, I'll always be. Whoever you may see, however you may fly, I'm always there. Wherever
However you may see, however you may fly,